Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for the December 2021 Tewksbury Writing Group meeting. Our guest speaker tonight is Ceara Comeau. But before we get to Ceara, I have the distinct privilege and honor of introducing our facilitator, author Dale T. Phillips, who has published novels, story collections, nonfiction, and over 70 short stories. Dale's college writing teacher was Stephen King. He has found time to appear on stage, TV, radio, in an independent feature film, and compete on Jeopardy! And he's a member of many writing organizations, including the Mystery Writers of America and the Sisters in Crime. We're so thankful to have him. Let's give a big virtual round of applause to Dale for joining us tonight and being our facilitator. And Dale, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you to the library for sponsoring these programs. Again, let the library know what you want to see, more of this and anything in particular. I'm privileged to know a lot of really good writers from very experienced, long time to up and coming, and I'm trying to present a program of differences so that everyone who attends here can take away something. And thank you all for showing up tonight. I know it's a busy time of year. Now, I met Ceara several years ago, and as I told her, I instantly knew that she was going to be one of the ones that was going to make it. And as I said, I'm so thankful that she has proven me right. She is terrific. She has gone to a lot of conventions. She's all over the place and selling tons of books. She's got all kinds of projects. She's absolutely fearless when it comes to trying new things. So she's been writing stories for as long as she can remember. She got her first book published when she was 15 years old. So there you go, all you slackers. But she had help from her parents, so you didn't have that. And she finished that series in 2014, and she transitioned from mystery to fantasy and science fiction writing. And her book, Memories of Chronosalis, published in 2018, won the National Association of Book Entrepreneurs Pinnacle Book Achievement Award. Her early books set the stage for her Heroes of Avalon trilogy, which takes a different twist on the Arthurian legends. And she's currently writing screenplays for her stories. Take note, everybody. She has a team to start an independent film company. Their mission is to be the voice for independent authors in their region and beyond. They want to show that it's possible for other self-published authors, let us say independent authors, because we always work in teams, to put their writing on the big screen. When she's not writing, she enjoys spending time reading, researching genealogy, and gardening. Ceara, please take it away and let us know more about you.
Well, hi there. Thank you all for appreciate the invite, and I haven't really ever done anything like this before, so we'll see what happens.
But you do video reviews of other people's books also.
Yes.
You're very helpful to other authors.
Yes, I've sadly been slacking on that, just given this past several months have been so crazy for me, but I love doing that as well. So that's a little bit kind of on the back burner for now, just with everything that all the projects that I've ended up acquiring in the last several months. But for me, so yeah, I started writing my first few stories when I was 12, and it was actually my mom that encouraged me to publish. She said, "You got something here," and I'm like, okay. I didn't know what. I mean, I was only a kid, so I really wasn't sure what I had. I actually started writing because I was getting bullied and I didn't have an outlet. So I started writing about a girl who was fearless, who was powerful, and who could change her world. And because that's the kind of person I wanted to be. And for me, that grew into something beyond. I always say that character was my alter ego, and to this day she still is. And so when my mom suggested, "Hey, let's do it, let's just try it, humor me," I said okay. So it became a family thing, and actually to this day it is still a family thing. I'm happy to say I don't know, I wouldn't be anywhere I am right now without the help of my parents, past and present. And so that's where I went. And initially, how I like to compare my original stories, I like to tell people, think Nancy Drew meets Twilight Zone. That's where I was going in my original series. And I knew I could do more with it. And I think it was when I was 21, I decided I know Amber can get better. I know that that could change. And my parents were like, I remember the conversation too. It was a family vacation and we were coming home. My dad almost stopped the car when I said, I want to scratch it and rewrite it. He's like, wait, what? You want to rewrite something you've been working on since you were like 12? I'm like, yes, because I can do better. And that is something I think I've always strived for, is becoming a better, not just as a better person, but a better artist, a better writer, and just try to do better. And because I've always believed that there's always more to learn, there's always more to learn about yourself and in the writing world in general. And I never went to college for writing itself. I actually went to college for public relations and advertising with a minor in graphic design, because I wanted to be able to use those tools to help boost what I already knew about writing. And I'm pleased to say that that has 100% helped me. Had I not gone to college for that, I honestly would not be where I am right now as far as I've gone. And I took those stories when I was 21, I believe it was, and I created Memories of Chronosalis. And I feel like to a degree that the story of that specific story and just Amber Oak, the original short stories I wrote, those have never left me. And that story itself prompted me to look further into that galaxy, into that solar system and that universe. I call it my Chronosalis universe. So I like to tell people, think Marvel when you think of what I'm trying to write. And that gives you a very large picture of what I'm planning to do. I plan to delve into the multiverse. I plan to describe creatures. Actually, this trilogy I'm writing based off the King Arthur legend is setting the stage for the main villains of the entire universe as a whole. So anything that goes wrong in Chronosalis universe is because of them. And I actually make little ties back. I have been heavily inspired by Marvel to delve into that concept of crossovers. So in future books, I actually have the next several books after the trilogy figured out, and some of the characters will be crossing over, what I like to call the Galactic Council. So they'll be in charge of figuring out the universe's problems and seeing what they can do. So think of the Avengers in that sense.
It's worked well for them.
Yes, yes. But yeah, for me, this new project I'm taking on is, and there's at times I feel like I'm in over my head because I've never delved into screenplay writing before. But I was inspired by my partner, Killarney Trainer, who's also a local novelist. And she's also a filmmaker too. And we actually had I think it was like some kind of craft fair thing together. She asked me, hey, did you want to share a table? We had never shared a table before, but we've been to Comic-Cons before and events. So I said, sure, why not? Because we get along very well. And I don't even know what got us started on talking about screenplay writings. And I don't know what it was, but somehow it just happened. We just started talking about it and it clicked. And we were like, you know what, let's do this. Let's create something called, we called it Book Sisters Productions. So kind of tying all that in. And it was really exciting because at first we were both nervous, like, can we actually do this? Like, is this something that we can work together on? Because we live so far away, but we have regular meetings with each other. We have sometimes meetups and stuff. And we slowly but surely we realized that this is something we can do. So in the meantime, while we're getting ready to film, we're taking my original Amber Oak stories that I started with, and we're actually turning those into a multi-film series, which will then tie back into Memories of Chronosalis. And we already have a location set, and we've actually had the people of the town. They're very helpful. They're, permitting us to use their lands and stuff. So we've got the groundwork pretty well laid out for it. We're hoping by June that we're going to start pre-production. So we're very excited for that.
Excellent. Dean has a question. He goes, Are you at all a fan of Robert E. Howard, who made the Conan and Solomon Kane stories? He's been a huge influence on Dean's writing as far as fantasy. Who are your influences, if not Robert E. Howard?
I have not heard of him, unfortunately, but now I'm very intrigued.
But, definitely look him up. Absolutely.
Yes, I will have to. I love book recommendations and story recommendations. I'd say for me, my biggest inspiration, I actually didn't get a whole lot into science fiction writings. It was more fantasy. My science fiction aspect and my inspiration for that actually came from Doctor Who, of all things. I grew up with Doctor Who and that kind of genre.
Okay, who's your favorite doctor?
It's going to be Tom Baker, hands down.
Okay, classicist, good.
Okay, we're good. I Tom Baker for the older generation and David Tennant for the new.
And David Tennant for the new, right.
Yep.
Okay, you pass.
Pass, okay, awesome. But so that was where a lot of my inspiration for the science fiction aspect came from. That Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis. So those kind of things influenced my science fiction aspect. But for fantasy, because I was mostly into fantasy reading and fantasy films, would have to be the Harry Potter series. I was heavily inspired by J.K. Rowling's story of how she got to Harry Potter. And I thought to myself, well, if she got there with how she started, I can get there too. And it was like that epiphany that hit me when I actually read her story and watched documentaries on her. I didn't know how much struggle she had to go through to get to where she is today. And I'm like,
a struggling single mom.
Yeah, exactly.
To crank out these 900-page, opuses,
Exactly. So I'd say for me, that was, and to this day, like if I'm writing a story, I honestly will probably have Harry Potter in the background. Not gonna lie.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Sorry to derail you. Yeah, go on.
No,
with your journey.
Fine.
Now, when I saw you, you were pretty much starting out as far as your professional world. And in those few years since then, you have just exploded all over the New England and beyond con scene.
Yes, it's always an adventure to every con I go. And even if I go to a repeat con, there's always something new. There's always, I always tell myself before I get ready to drive off to the next convention, I always say, okay, expect the unexpected. Expect anything to go wrong, but expect everything to go right. So be prepared for anything.
Yep, that's pretty much how you have to do it. And bring enough books, because you never know if you'll sell 4 or 50.
Yes, I always say, bring more than you think you'll ever sell, and you'll probably sell out of that much.
Right. Just keep in the car, and if you have to go out, go get
exactly.
some more.
Exactly. We earlier this year went to, that actually happened to me when my team and I went to, I think it was the Granite State Comic-Con, and it was my first time going as a vendor, so I wasn't again sure what to expect, but I had gone there. And I said to myself, okay, well, I know it's going to be busy from what I've heard from people have told me, but again, this is kind of new in the sense this was after, it's been 2 years since they've done it. So I really wasn't sure what to expect, but I said to myself, you know what, I'll bring like 30 books, whatever, I'll be fine. So honestly, it was the first day, Saturday, when we got the most people, because you're going to find more people come Saturday than Sunday in most Comic-Cons. And I found that I'm counting all the books that I had left over like 2 hours before the first day was over. And I'm like, and I asked my team, I'm like, where's this book? You sold out. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did. No, I didn't. I promise you sold out. And I'm like, what? It's like, it was going so fast. Like I had it in my head. I already knew how much I had, but I just couldn't believe that I sold out, because I had never done that before. That had never happened to me. And I find that every Comic-Con I go to, if it's a really successful one, like one that I'm selling a lot of books at, I keep it in my head, okay, I'm coming back here next year.
Right.
Because
have you
usually
done
by that time,
up in Portland? Have you done
Oh, I've
PortCon?
tried getting in there.
Ah.
This was like a couple years ago, and I actually sent in an application, but I wasn't sure. I don't know what happened. I think it might have even been too late, but they rejected. But I'd love to go to PortCon. That's kind of one
And
of my
Bangor up in Maine has a big con too. So those would
yes.
be ones for you to check out, definitely. Now, you say your team. Tell us about your team and how you put them together.
Well, my team is my husband.
That's good. So
Yes, that's all I
people have
got.
to marry your husband to get him to work for them.
Well, no, I'm kidding. So my husband has always been a fan of my books, my husband Jeffrey. And he actually is, whenever I write a book or a screenplay, he's the first person that reads it because he knows exactly where my brain goes for certain things. And he also knows that I don't always write what I'm thinking. So he's super good at like reading things out and being like, and he's tough. He's tough on me, but like that tough love kind of way.
Mhm.
And so he'll go with me to Comic Cons. And honestly, when we first went to events together, it was kind of like testing the waters because we both were not used to the cons or the events. We didn't really know what we were doing right off the bat. So after each event that we went to, we started getting better and better, and we developed more ideas of how to market ourselves. One thing that I did that helped me a lot was he would always ask me, well, what do you want me to wear? Like, what do you want me to wear? Because I'm representing you. And I got so tired of like trying to answer that question because I didn't know what to tell him that I ended up making a shirt that's the staff on the back and like 3 colors. So all he has to do is choose 3
love it.
colors.
Got black pants and the staff shirt. Yep.
There
Done.
we go. And so, but then it gets people's attention because I like to generally stay at the table. I don't move around a lot. I don't
Right.
really
Same. Yeah.
like to. I like to stay there because I like meeting the people, obviously. And I don't like to move around a lot, but he does. He likes to go around, wander, see what other vendors are like, what they have. And
Right.
while he's doing that, he also brings business cards with him. So if people say, hey, what's with the shirt? He is one of my biggest promoters at any Comic-Con because he'll proudly show people, see, I'm staff, and he'll show on the back of his shirt.
That's awesome.
It's wonderful. So he's also helpful in helping me with inventory and the financial part. So we make a really good team because when we go into Comic-Cons, when we first did, it was kind of, I wouldn't call it a mess, but we didn't have a system of setting up and taking down. We didn't even consolidate our stuff that we had. So we weren't prepared necessarily. We were as prepared as newbies could be prepared. But now what we do is I'll have everything packed the night before. We pack it in the car the night before. We head out. We get set up in less than 5 minutes. We have it down to a pack, the T. Because if something that gives me time for if something does go wrong, it's within a decent time period. Because I'm anxious a lot when it comes to situations like that. Like I like everything to be as perfect as I can make it humanly, because that's just always how I've been. And so I like having room for error. Like if we forgot something or if something were to happen, like in the case of Granite State, we came back the next day with more books. So we're more prepared, and there's always something we're learning, and each time that we go to an event, we're always learning something, whether it's, hey, this was the best hotel to get at this point, let's get it again, or whatever it might be. There's always something new to learn.
So you think a lot of your success is just based on experience of trying something, taking the feedback, trying something new and working and constantly just tweaking your whole process into absolute, you've got it down, bang, you come in, you're prepared, you set up and you're ready to meet people and you do it. And do you get a lot of repeat buyers?
I do. I actually have a small fan base, but I do have a wonderful fan base. And every time I have a new book come out, they'll be like, oh, hey, I'm going to come. I want to buy one more book from you. And it's so great. It's so nice to have that repeat fan base. And when I was in New York, I even had some guy come back the next day. I mean, he bought all the books. He said, I'm now one of your fans. And I'm like, what? Me?
Yes.
And it's not something I always hear. Not that I don't have. I'm just an independent writer from New Hampshire, so even though I have a small fan base, I don't hear that very often. But when people do, when you hear it, you feel like you're on cloud nine, and you feel like,
Absolutely.
oh my gosh, I can accomplish anything. So yes, I do have a small base, so it's kind of nice. And I feel like at every time I go to a new event, wherever it may be, that keeps growing, because the one thing I often see is repetition. People like seeing who's behind the book.
Mm-hmm.
People often like seeing that, and I always tell people that's why whenever I go to events, I always have a fancier outfit on, and my hair is always blue, because a lot of people, when I first started this whole thing, they couldn't pronounce my name very well, so they started calling me the girl with blue hair, which I was totally okay with. It's a cool nickname, like, hey,
I think I've seen you with purple too, so
yeah, I have a little purple. I do a little purple.
Yeah.
And so we've been kind of switching it up. But one thing I've learned is when people go by your table, they don't always see your books, but they will always see you. So if they don't see your books first, they'll see you, and they'll be able to associate and identify, oh, she wrote that. In fact, there was a moment in New York, and it blew me away, that there was this, I don't know who it was, but this girl came by and said, she looked at my books, looked at me, looked at my books, and she looked really confused. And I'm like, I don't know what to say at the point, because she didn't say anything. So I just stood there and smiled. And she's like, I've seen this before. I'm thinking to myself, I haven't been to New York. I don't know where you've seen it. And it turned out, she says, I saw it on Facebook. And it was one of the Facebook ads that I did. And I don't do those a lot, because they haven't always worked for me. But you have to do them very specifically, like target the certain demographic that you want to target. You can be very specific on it. And so when she said that, I'm like, yeah, you saw it on Facebook. Yeah.
Exactly. Tell us a bit about your book production process. Your cover artist, your formatting, pricing. How do you decide on distribution and production?
So I go through it. It actually is all in one thing, with the exception of the cover designer, who I'll get to in a minute. He's one of my best friends. So for the production itself, I go through a company called Lulu, which is similar to.
Interesting. I thought they were higher priced.
Well, actually, I've never had a problem with Lulu ever. I never left them. I've always stayed with them. I go through Lulu, which is very similar to like Amazon Kindle publishing. So they're all in the same universe, as it were. And with Lulu, I always tell people that they walk you through it, which is actually really, really nice. And they're open for, like, if you have a problem. Like, my mom is the one who's always done the formatting for me. She does it mainly through Word, but she has a certain template set up. And she's always like, just send me the book itself, I'll fix it, I got it. I'm like, okay, I don't want to mess with your system or whatever you got. But basically, if you put it in, Lulu will even tell you what kind of format that they want, which is really cool. It's a step-by-step procedure, so there's no room for you to get lost, which is also very nice. And as far as the pricing goes, you can set your own pricing, because what will happen is they'll ask you to set the pricing, and you do pay a certain amount to get the book to come to you. So like for us, most of the books are like between 6 or 5 and 5 to 7 approximately that we pay. So it all depends on what you guys want as authors. If you end up choosing to go that path, it really kind of just depends on I know a lot of my author friends, their prices have gone up a little bit higher due to everything in the last few years going on.
And if you want to give 40% to a bookstore.
Right, and that too. So I don't always go to bookstores either, because there is that consignment price, and that's always an iffy thing. And it's also contingent on whether you sell anything too, because some places they'll take the books, but they won't really give you money unless you sell something. So I've tried in the past to steer clear of it, unless I actually know the person who has the bookstore, and I'll usually help them out with that stuff. But generally speaking, I do everything online or in Comic-Cons. I have more success at Comic-Cons and events than I do really, honestly, anywhere else. I know with Lulu specifically, they have their own distribution package. So, which I think there's a certain cost to it. I don't know the number offhand, but honestly, it's worth it because then you can get your books. You type it in Google, it'll show up because that's where that distribution package comes in. They'll display it on Google, online at Barnes & Noble, online, Amazon. But I always strongly caution people whenever they ask me, hey, where can I buy your book? I will always direct them to Lulu, because if they were to go to like a third party like Amazon,
You get less, right?
I
Because
get
they take
so
a
much
cut.
less.
Every third party takes a cut.
Yeah, in fact, with Amazon, if people say, oh, I got your book off Amazon, there you go, I'll help you. I'll be like, thanks, but
Wait, I made 40 cents.
I'm not going to see that money, because here's the problem with Lulu. Once that gets back to Lulu, there's a certain amount that they give you. Like, it has to reach up to a certain amount. So that 40 cents, I would need to sell like 20 books off Amazon for me to get that check from Lulu.
Yeah.
So
well, Marie agrees with you that Lulu is excellent. Does Lulu give you an ISBN?
Okay, so yes, so you can get a free ISBN through Lulu, but there's a catch with it. There is a catch.
Yeah, they're listed as the publisher.
Exactly. So for me, I always go through Backwire, and their ISBNs, you can get them in a bundle, which is what I normally do.
Would you put that in the chat, please?
Yes,
people would want that link.
Yeah. Let me actually find a link.
What's your average cost? How many are you buying at a time? 25, 1,500?
Let me see. It's generally, trying to think. It really depends. I know the last time that I did it was.
If you buy 10, they're like 300 normally.
Yeah, there was a certain bundle, and I think it's a bit different every time. Let me just put that in the chat for everybody.
I know, they're always
here.
playing games with the prices. It's nice having a monopoly.
I know, right? So with that being said, the biggest thing that I have found with Lulu, I personally like being considered the publisher, because I like having total control over my books. Not that Lulu would do anything, but personally for me, I like that control. And we didn't know about that until Memories of Chronosalis, that we could be considered our own publisher. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that with Backwire, and I personally I find that it's not safer, I would say, but it's just nicer.
It gives you a comfort level.
Yeah, it really does. And that way you can say, hey, I can add publisher to my title here. So it's another thing.
Now, have you set up your own publishing company?
I have not, actually. I have.
We'll talk offline, because down in Mass, it's a very easy way. $40 for a doing business as for 4 years. $10 a year to set up your own publishing company. We'll talk offline.
Yeah. That sounds
and anybody else who wants to jump in on that conversation, let me know. Yes, Marie says if you're an LLC, the trouble is, Marie, is that LLCs cost money. DBAs cost very little and do much of the same thing without any lawyers, without a lot of paperwork, and it takes you, about an hour or two to set it up. Whereas an LLC is much more involved and getting deeper into the legal process. But yes, it's good to have very much something set up for yourself. If you're going to be independent publishing, become your own publisher, is what she's saying. And just taking that next step, having that comfort level of having everything under your control, under one set of auspices. Exactly. Yeah, and Marie says, look at Tarzan. It was the first LLC writer.
So yeah, I've always been one. Once I started doing writing as a real career, which is something I decided, at my early 20s when Memories came out, I decided I wanted as much control as possible, because I realized, and I had actually, believe it or not, I had looked into getting into traditional publishing, going through one of the big time publishing houses, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized I'd have less control over what I wanted to write and over
You have
what
no control. As soon as you
Exactly.
sign with a publisher, you have almost zero control.
Exactly. And that's why, and I didn't realize that. And I don't think a lot of authors realize that once you sign that contract for your book, you got nothing.
Right.
You
You get peanuts for it, and you give them all control.
exactly. And so
Marie's really pushing the LLC, which is great, because she says the legal Zoom LLC is only about 125. And the writing is an entity, and the residuals can be willed and never go out of copyright. Thank you, Marie. That's great information.
that is good information.
Is there
I
a
like it.
website or something that people can go to get info? One particular one. We love to share the information here so people can go, I want to check that out further. If that's okay, take your time, and if you can send it after, that's fine. Yeah, sorry, Kara,
No, it's okay. It's fine. But yeah, when I had finally looked into, because I actually did get a lot of rejections originally for Memories of Chronosalis, but one of the other problems was my book was so different, and it was the concept that I was writing about was not what was in style, unfortunately, several years back. And that's what a lot of publishers are looking for. They're looking for stuff that sounds similar.
Can you put a sparkly vampire in it? No,
I probably could. Yeah, they would have said something. Exactly. So when I realized that I wasn't fitting their mold, and that was the majority of the reason why I wasn't getting anywhere with that, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna keep doing it myself. Because I know what I want. I know that my stuff is super unique, and I know it'll get somewhere. And that's where I made the determination that I said, I don't need them. I'm going to make them realize they need me. And so that is why I said, forget traditional publishing. I'm just going to go my route, and I'm going to make it happen and make it work.
That's similar to what I did too. And this is why the successful people who realize, I don't need somebody else to create my success. I can work, learn the business, and create my own success, find my own niche, find my own readers, and do everything that somebody else can do for me, and not have to pay somebody else or trust them to make the money and give me whatever, left over.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it all yourself. You can find your own team, find your industry, and anything you want. And what I love about you is that you keep experimenting. You keep checking out new things and going, well, here's something. Let's try this, see if it's successful. And you found great success by doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the one thing that I've always wanted to say, well, why not? Well, why can't I try this? Because I've always been the believer that if I don't try something, I'll never know. I'll never know if it will work or if it won't work. And you know what? Even from the quote unquote failures that I've had in my career, I don't really call them failures. I call them lessons, because I at least learned something from it. I learned, oh, I can do this, or, oh, maybe I should have done it differently. So I always try to keep that positive perspective. It might not always come across that way when I talk to my husband.
Yeah. Well, he has to listen to everything now.
Exactly.
Exactly. He's got a filter. Yeah, exactly. There's an old expression. It's not failure, it's feedback.
There you
go. It's like you say, a lesson, because you're getting feedback. It's like, okay, I have found, like Edison with his 10,000 tries at a light bulb, I have found all these many different ways that a light bulb will not work.
Exactly.
And I can rule them out and move on to the ones that will.
Exactly. And it's nice because I can take those lessons and be able to help other writers who I see are in that same, who were in that same, or in the same position that I was in. And I can say, this might work for you, but if it doesn't, you can try this direction. And so I always add that to I call it my little folder, like my little filing cabinet in my head of, can this work? And if I try it again, would I do something differently, or how can I do something differently? And I feel like that's the part about being an independent writer and publisher, is that eventually we all come to that point where we know what works and we keep going with what works. And I think that's what's really helpful, is knowing that when I have a huge support team. So my mom, my dad are always trying to help me. My husband's always helping me. Family's always helping me, and friends who I've even at my work, I've even gathered a huge support group of friends who are like, hey, you got this, you can keep it going. And some of them have even bought my books and they've read them and loved them. So that just the concept of being there and saying, hey, I got your back, or hey, you can do this. And I've actually had people at work help me through writer's blocks who have said, hey, work it out for me. And it sounds kind of silly because it's like, but you don't know my book. Just talk it out. So just every little bit of that coming together. And when I first started writing, when I decided in my early 20s that I wanted to really do this for a career, I didn't have that big of a support group. All I really had was my husband and my parents. And at the time it was he was just my fiance or boyfriend. So I really didn't have a whole lot, but I found I got more support the further I got along in this career and the more connections. I always say to people, connections are your best friend. And a lot of people, I saw that, Marie. Yes, yeah. It is a good support group to start out with, definitely. But growing that group is also so important. And I know writers who start out, they don't realize that that's what helps get you out there, because word of mouth is it's a free form of publicizing your stuff, but it's also like one of the best ways of people say, hey, did you hear about her book? Or hey, did you hear about this author, or whatever? And it really does a number. It does work. I've actually had that happen to me at Comic-Cons, especially the New York Comic-Con, when I was talking to some people and they said, oh, my friend just told me about you, that's why I came over. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see that kind of support, even with people who barely can pronounce your name. That is awesome. And that's how you know you have good representation. That's how you know you have you got something strong.
Marie asks if you use LinkedIn. I know you're on Facebook and
yes,
probably Twitter. And yeah, you definitely are on Twitter.
Yes. I do have a LinkedIn account, but I'm really bad at it. I actually was able to connect with somebody through LinkedIn, and she'd asked me to look over her book to help. I guess she wanted feedback on her story, which is actually really, really good. And it's something I'm still working on. Well,
careful, if you say something like that, people in the group are going to start asking you.
Well, I will say I'm limiting my level of that project is on the way down here. And I even told her, I said, okay, I'm gonna let you know I do have a lot of other projects and a full-time job, so it's gonna take me some time. She's like, it's okay. I'm like, okay. And so
once you get successful, people like, well, could you look at my stuff? And I go, but if I do, that's less time that I have for writing. So
yes. Yeah. So one thing I've learned, and I've had to learn this recently, is know how to say no politely. And that is something that has always been hard for me, because I've always wanted to be able to help everybody. My husband can tell you that is something that is my biggest flaw, because I want to be there for everybody, for all the writers. But unfortunately, that's not always possible. And it's not always, you have to, I'm not trying to say look out for you, but you have to know what your limits are. If
self-care, you need to have an awareness of self-care.
You do. And that's something I think I had to learn majorly this year, with everything, all the projects that I have going on in my life, plus, full-time working. It's not possible to do everything. And there was one situation where I had to tell somebody, I'd like to, but I can't. And it's because I just have way too much on my plate to be able to take on this project right now. And I think that, I mean, like I said, as a writer, you're always learning something about your craft. You're always learning something even about yourself. And that was something that I had to learn the hard way, that I was getting burnt out. And I had to take a step back and say, okay, what can I do? What should I be putting all my energy towards more? What's the most important thing? And so I always encourage authors, and other writers, and any time you're starting a career, you have to ask yourself, what is going to push you forward in the field that you want to go into. What's going to push you forward as an author or even an artist in general? You know, that was something that I think was it was a bit of an eye opener this year for me to learn. And something you mentioned, Dale, that I forgot to mention, which I feel awful about not mentioning, but my cover designer. So Lulu is also great because they do provide photos for you to use if you want, but just remember,
stock photography, good.
Yep, but just remember, like Amazon and others.
Is it licensed? I mean, do you have the license to use that commercially if you buy the stock photo?
Yes, but it's up to a certain amount of copies. So that's the one.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So for Lulu, I think it's like 500 copies, but don't quote me on that. So there's a minimum. Usually you would use that kind of a thing if you're not expecting what you're writing to go suit, like if it's like something for you or for your family, you could use it. But I always, or even if it's a book that you're just starting out with, you can use that too. And it's also free. It comes with Lulu. There's other companies that provide stock photos like dreamstime.com. I use them several times. But with
we use Big Stock Photo, and there's a couple other services too.
Yeah.
If you pay like $1.50 or something, you get the license to use the image and incorporate that into your cover.
Yeah. And so
Unsplash, says Marie.
Yeah. For me, after Memories of Colonel Salas, I realized I didn't have, and the reason why that photo specifically came from another company that I outsourced in Europe, and they were really good and they were affordable. But
Fiverr? Fiverr?
No, it wasn't Fiverr. It was J&D Cover Designs, I think, but I hadn't used them ever since, not because I didn't like their photos. I thought it was great, but it was because I actually met someone at a Comic-Con that I went to down in Mass. And his name is Matthew Ross Crafton, who is the designer. He has his own company called Space Viking Productions.
Oh, okay. Throw up his link so people can.
I shall, because he is.
I know Dean's going to be wanting to check it out.
Yes, I am always promoting him because he just does such a great job. Let me get you his. Get there. I'm awful at talking and messaging at the same time. And
I know. I try to get you to multitask. And
it's okay.
I've also posted the interview that you did with me back in July, so people can check that out.
Awesome. So, Dean, Matt is amazing. And what's even nicer is what we did last time, the last cover that he did, because he's been doing the covers for my trilogy. And when I first started working with him, I was super, super nervous because I'm like, he doesn't really know me and he hasn't read my books. He's only going based off of what I told him. So I'm over here like, this is such a new territory for me. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I liked what he did because I had seen his work. We were actually almost table buddies, and we were talking the entire Comic-Con. It was only one day, and we just hit it off like that. And so for the first cover, he actually does his designs on Twitch TV, so I could see it with 1,000%. He'd love that. He would love that.
I told you. I said Dean's going to be all over that.
So he's on Twitch TV, and so he'll talk to people, have music in the background. And recently what we did was we started doing impromptu interviews with me during the time that he did the second cover. And we weren't actually planning it. It just sort of happened. And he just started talking to me because it was easier for him to communicate with me while he was doing the design. So he could be like, okay, well, is this what you're looking at? How about this? And in fact, my favorite part of the last cover is that with the last cover had a huge sword on it. The main character was holding a sword, and that sword was specifically designed for this character. And we actually got several of his friends who are swords experts. They all pitched in and said, hey, maybe we could try this. And it was funny because he said, guys, remember, this is the author stuff. And I just chatted back saying, yes, let's do it.
Nice.
So it was so great. And he's so easy to work with. And he's also very affordable. In fact, he's actually working with me on 2 logos for the multi-film series that I'm working on. So, and those are turning out really, really well. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, that's the nice thing, is that successful people pass on their success for others. It's like,
Yes.
hey, I have found somebody that's really great to work with, affordable, and does quality work.
Yes.
Check it out and go help them out.
Oh yeah, I was talking to my film partner Killarney, I said, hey, just so you know, this is what he does. And she's like, really? I need to get a whole new rebranding thing. And I'm like, well, here you go.
Yeah, I love connecting people up.
It's wonderful.
Here's the thing, you go to a lot of cons. Have you been on panels yet?
Once. I want to get on more because I really, really love them. It was actually a couple of years ago at the Vermont Science Fantasy Expo, and it was my first time being on a panel, and I think it was about science fiction fantasy with women authors, and I had such a great time with the ladies that I was with, and just, it was so much fun. And it was actually kind of nerve-wracking because I wasn't sure what to do, but fortunately there were people there, the ladies on the panel.
A good moderator will help you out. That's it. They'll
exactly.
direct you. Exactly.
And that was the thing, because I was like, I'm up here, I don't know what to say. And so, but fortunately the lady next to me was like, she took the mic and she said, I got this. And so she started the conversation. I'm like, I'll be that one day.
Yeah, absolutely. It really helps because people hear what you have to say. I've been on a lot of panels at small cons like Granite Con and Port Con and things like that. Also national level conventions, Boucher Con, Killer Nashville, Crime Bake. And people hear what you have to say. And if you're interesting, they come up and they buy your books afterwards.
Mhm.
I asked somebody, I said, why are you buying this book? They said, because I liked what you said up on the panel. I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
And it gives you a chance to talk about your work in a way that sounds interesting to people. I like to really engage the audience, not just talk at them, but talk with them.
Right.
And pull them into the conversation and get the questions like we do here, very much so, and have the people really invest in it, in the whole process.
Yep, I fully agree with that. And I think, and that was one of my favorite parts about when I realized I liked doing panels, that, and it was a small panel too, so it wasn't anything like on a massive scale, but I enjoyed the group's feedback. Like they were like, some people were there with notebooks and everything. I'm like, wow, y'all are really, really serious about this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was blown away, and it was exciting because it's like, wow, they want to hear what I have to say. And again, this was 2 years ago, so I didn't have nearly as much knowledge as I do now that I did back then. So it's like, I want to do more of that. Unfortunately, not all Comic-Cons and conventions have that. Some of the larger ones, they call you, you don't call them. So
well, sometimes just talk to the organizers when you know you're going to a con, and just let them know. Say, look, I'm going to be a vendor there. I've been on some panels. I'd like to do more. If you're putting one together, here's a couple of ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing I like to do going to cons that I know that are going to benefit me, and that like the ones like the one in Saratoga, I've been trying, to get connected to the people who run the event, and I say, hey, hi, my name's Ceara Comeau, and I go into details about like, this is what I do. And it's nice to get connections like that, because generally speaking, if they're a con that large, like Saratoga is a very large con, they're also going to have connections to other Comic-Cons as well.
Oh yes, once you get on the circuit, yeah, people love you, and you make a good name for yourself. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why I say not just connections with other writers and other publishers, but connections with cons themselves are super important, because once you get a good name for yourself, and people like what you're selling, you're like right in with that.
Yeah, and people, it's not just cons for all our audience. It's not just cons, but it's writer organizations, teaching opportunities. I've had people attend one of my panels, and I got a gig at the Cape Cod Writers Conference out of it. I mean, I got to teach and make money and go to Cape Cod for the summer, and have them pay all expenses and give you money and sell books. So you never know what you're going to get from a talking opportunity. If you've got some energy, and like Ceara has, and if you've got some positive things to give to people and share with them, you never know where it's going to lead. And so these are all wonderful opportunities.
Yeah. Now I will say, I do have a little secret, and that secret is I'm not this bubbly in real life.
I know, it's like every time we see you in public, you are, and that's the secret.
It is. So I know the majority of writers out there, and I know this for a fact because I'm exactly like that too. A lot of writers are really introverted. I know a
Introverts,
lot.
yeah.
So many. I call myself an ambivert. Like I can be introverted and extroverted. It really just depends on the situation. Like
Right.
once I get into, I call it book mode or author mode, I'm as extroverted as you can get. I define extrovert. But if I'm like at work or if I'm at home, I usually shut the door and say, don't talk to me.
Same. And it's funny because writers are introverted, but we're expected to put a public face on
Yep.
and be talking to other people and put ourselves out for other people. But I don't know if you find this the same thing. After a con, I need a couple days to decompress.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, always. I'm 100% there. Like I usually actually take it the next day off from work just to decompress.
Yeah. Oh, Marie asked, what's your day job?
I work retail.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you really
Yes.
have to be on. Oh my gosh.
I do. Honestly, I have so much love for other retail workers just because it is a hard life. Retail is not for the faint of heart. Just like with food service, you're dealing with people from all walks of life, from all grumpy parts of life. And it's especially during the holidays, you get those crazy people. So yeah, it's hard. So yeah, you
Do you
have to
ever
put
treat those people in your books with a little bit of revenge?
a little bit.
Just a smidge. Okay.
Just a smidge. Well, no, honestly, I always look at it as I always say when people ask me why do I write stories, it's like people inspire me, and I always say that they inspire me because
Characters or people?
they really are. Like I actually got a name of one of my future characters from somebody who pronounced my name wrong, and I looked at them and it was so funny. I looked at them, I'm like, what did you say? They try to pronounce my name. I'm like,
Ceara? Yeah.
no, it was Ceara. And I'm like,
Ceara.
yeah.
Okay, I can see
I'm
that.
like,
Yeah.
and I was staring at them like I'm thinking to myself, I'm in book mode now. This is bad. Act normal. And I couldn't because it was so awesome. And I said, thank you. You just helped me with the character. And they're like,
Right.
okay, like go, all right.
All right.
Cash me out, please.
So, okay. Yeah, I know. I back in November, I found a great person's name. I saw the name tag and I said, can I use your name as a character name? Because that's just the best. And they go, yeah, sure. Okay. I said, great. I'm going to do that.
Yes.
Now, Marie wants to get personal and says, what kind of retail do you do?
So I work, I'm not sure where you guys are all located, but I work for a company called Ocean State Job Lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's where I work. I'm the clothing department head and front end
I
supervisor.
thought they were more Rhode Island than up in New
So
Hampshire.
they're actually spread. They've spread to like they're trying to spread out towards New York now.
Robert says they got one in Tewksbury.
Yes. I actually vaguely when I saw Tewksbury, I thought to myself, hey, I think we have a store out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we they're from Rhode Island initially, but they're trying to spread westward more towards towards Pennsylvania, New York. But we do have quite a lot in New Hampshire, and we have a lot we have a few in Vermont. But yeah, so we have a few stores like that.
Now, Dean's got a great question because some people listen to certain things, particularly music when they're writing. He likes Nirvana and grunge rock when he writes. Do you have a music you listen to?
Yes.
Or
Yes,
just
I do.
white noise or anything like that?
I like to listen, at least recently, to a lot of Celtic and classical music. That's honestly
Like
something
Celtic
I
harp,
follow.
that kind of thing, or Dropkick Murphys Celtic?
Celtic Thunder, Celtic Women, Enya, Yanni. I listen to
Okay,
all those.
okay.
They're I call it my study music because I used to listen to it a lot in college when I was studying. But I also like to listen to it when I need to focus because a lot of their music can be background. And I know also Tim Janis is another one. And
Yes, I listen to Tim Janis. Yeah.
I love his music because it puts me, I used to listen to that a lot as a child, like when I was really little, and it puts me back into that childlike mindset and that childlike phase of what do I want as magic, as fantasy. So
and it has that tone to it, right? That gets you in the mood. Good.
Exactly right. So yeah, I do listen now, unless it's like a character that's going through like a traumatic thing. I don't really listen to anything else. Sometimes I'll listen to certain songs that have like a harsher beat if the character's mad, or it depends on how I want who I want to get into the mind of, and how and what phase of their life or their character development they're into.
Yeah, I can't have lyrics in the music I listen to. And that's why I need something like Tim Janis or some just instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
Usually soft instrumental, just very low, very much in the background, just as a white noise kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maria is saying, this is a good point. Be careful with names that you use, because she knows of one author that was sued for more than the book was worth, and she had to take out a second mortgage. Yes, always change names, people, or change characters enough, and put that disclaimer in the front of the book. This is a work of fiction.
You're so right.
And if they ever bring you into court, go, did you not look at this page? Because it says it's a work of fiction.
Right. Oh no, I fully agree with that, Marie. Always. That's why I always tell people, and I always get nervous when people like independent authors, and when I read their books, I'll see that they post, like they'll put actual like company names in it.
And name brands. Yeah, no.
I get so nervous.
And like, song lyrics. No.
I know. It's like, I'm reading it and I'm just like, I'm not trying to tell you what to write. I'm not trying to tell you how to write, but y'all gotta be careful about this because this is gonna be in trouble.
Right.
So that's why I always say to whenever I'm writing, I'll use very generic terms, like she looked something up on the internet or something so generic that
I do the same thing, right? I try not to mention name brands because A, I don't want to give them the publicity, and B, I don't want any negative publicity to bounce back.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. I think a lot of that stems from my paranoia of getting sued. So that's why I'm always like, I never ever.
And if we write something, that's and Marie mentions that even the author had the disclaimer and was with somebody like Simon and Schuster. And sometimes they have a writer that says, if you are sued, they're not responsible. Mm-hmm. Even though they're supposed to be the publisher, they're the ones supposed to be screening this, running it through legal and doing this, and they do nothing for you. So you're still on your own.
Right.
Dean says, can quotes become a problem? And what if the person's is deceased? Copyright, you've got to look up copyright law. Yeah, intellectual property law is what Marie says. And copyright law, if something's in the public domain, you can use it. But quotes, there's the Fair Use Act, limited usage for certain things. I talk about a lot of this in my book, How to Be a Successful Indie Writer. And it's got chapters on a lot of this stuff, where to go for further information on that. But yeah, you've got to be very, very careful about what you put out there to the world. And that's why fantasy is usually better, because it's like, nobody can say, well, I am a wizard and you have defamed me.
Right. Fantasy and sci-fi are super easy to use in that regard, because there's very little room, like, because you can like make up your own store name, or you can make up your own car name. You don't necessarily have to, you know what I mean? It's like, so it's easier to avoid that kind of a situation with science fiction fantasy versus normal mystery or romance or whatnot.
Right.
So yeah, I fully get that.
Do you have a writing group, or besides your husband, any other beta readers or screeners and editors?
I actually have very few people. Like my dad is the other person I'll go to. Usually I send it through my husband first and then my dad, because my husband is nicer to me than my dad will be.
Well, you don't want nice when you got your first level. You don't want nice. You want somebody that doesn't care about your, whether they're offending you or not.
Well, let me tell you, we've had arguments. My husband and I've had arguments over stuff that I've written. I'm be like, but I did this. Like, I'm talking hours of arguments, and I'll be like, I understand, honey, but you can't do it this way. It won't work. And I'll be, well, why not? Like, I would literally, like, the last book that I wrote, I would stop talking to him for at least an hour, and then I'll come back pouting and be like, Okay, I'm ready
You're
to
right.
listen.
Yeah, my wife won't read my stuff just for that reason, because she goes, if I tell you it's great, you won't believe me. And if I tell you it's
Right.
bad, you won't talk to me. So
Right, exactly. Now, my dad, on the other hand, the reason I sent it to him second is because he'll be like, did you even read this?
it doesn't work for me. And then
Right,
you know, there's something that you need to look at.
right. And he'll tell me, like, we have so many inside jokes, and it's actually really, really hilarious because, well, all the jokes he'll be like, remember that joke? He's like, he'll like to do Department of Redundancy department. And it's usually when I say something and I've said it over and over again. And so we'll have little jokes like that. And it's absolutely hilarious. And my dad and I will spend days sitting down on the couch together because he's not really familiar with Word necessarily. So he likes to print the whole thing out, go through it. And I've actually learned a lot from him as being my own, not my own editor, but going through it and re-looking at my stuff. So I've learned a lot of techniques from my dad, who's been an avid reader for as long as I can remember. In fact,
Does he read other stuff in that genre or just yours?
He reads other things. So he'll read everything from nonfiction all the way to science fiction fantasy. And so it's nice that he's got the library. I like to call it the library of an encyclopedia, because he's got topics on almost everything historically based. So it's kind of nice to get his viewpoint of, he'll be like, I know this is fictitious, but you're talking about, like, sometimes I'll be talking about certain things about humanity. And he'll be like, I know you're talking about this, but you need to make sure you get this situation correct. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of nice to see his viewpoint, honestly, because he'll come from it as a perspective of being very analytical. And in some cases, I definitely 100% need that, because as a fantasy sci-fi writer, I'm not always thinking analytically. I'm thinking fantasy, magic, science fiction.
You're into the story and he's into the bones of it.
Yes, he's into the technical aspect. Now, my husband is too, because he absolutely is obsessed with anime. And so he watches, most of the anime he watches involves fantasy and sometimes science fiction. So
Attack on Titans.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know about that, but some of the stuff he'll tell me, I actually go to him, not just for proofreading, but to tell me, has this already been done before? And
right.
Which is really nice, because he's like the guru of, like, science fiction, fantasy, anime. Of course, he won't tell you that he is, but I know he is. Yeah. So he'll be like, I see what you're doing here, but this is not unusual. And I'll even go to him and I'll say to him, has this been done before? Because I always have the paranoia of accidentally plagiarizing somebody. That's something I've always been paranoid about.
Well, everything's been done before. It's how you treat it, right?
Exactly. So he'll be like, okay, well, if you want to keep this, try doing it something differently. So that's why I normally go to my husband first, because he has the science fiction fantasy mindset. Whereas my dad, although he does have the science fiction fantasy mindset, he's also more on the analytical side. And sometimes he'll get so down to the nitty gritty, I'll be like, but why do they need to know that? And my dad, one thing he'll tell me is, they don't need to know that. Your readers don't. You do, exactly.
Nice.
And
what about fight scenes, things like that?
Fight scenes are probably the hardest thing for me. So oftentimes I will bounce back and forth between my dad and my husband, because my dad has read a lot of historical battles and stuff like that. So he'll tell me stuff that he knows about. But my husband, on the other hand, because of the amount of anime he watches and such, he sees a lot of fight scenes too. So he can tell me, and he's able to help me with the action, more of the action. And that's something I'm dealing with the third book of my trilogy, is that there's this massive, full-blown out war that's going on at the very end of the book. And I'm still, like, puzzling over my head, how am I going to make this work? So sometimes I'll hit my husband and be like, all right, let's talk it out. What do you want to have happen? So when I start from the basics, he'll be able to walk me through, well, this is what you could do here. You can do this, because he at this point knows my characters very, very well. And I feel like for a beta reader, I always tell people, if you're going to start a series, like what I'm doing is like a series that's a standalone, but still a series at the same time. You want to make sure that your beta readers know your writing style, number one. And number two, you want to be consistent with the people you have reading your stuff, because they need to know who you are as a writer and, you know, as a person in general, so they know why your mind works the way it does.
Right. And you want to keep the voice the same from book to book too.
Exactly. So having consistency is really helpful. I think the only other person that I have reading anything of mine is my filmmaker partner, who reads my screenplays and helps me out with them. So so I think the only people I really have reading my stuff is mainly my husband and my dad, mostly because I know where they live and where they sleep, so I can pester them if the book isn't read yet.
Dean says he reads Fight Right. It's a book he got on Amazon to tell you how to write fight scenes.
Ooh, I have not, but now I want to find it.
Yeah, he just put that in the chat.
Nice.
Maria also asked about add a problem. Dean's question: if the person is deceased, can you use them? And what Marie says is absolutely true. Deceased is still tricky because they've always got heirs. So famous dead people, now you're getting into a gray area, fuzzy area, but if they're a public persona, they're a little more fair game. But again, just, you know, it's good enough to change it. We're writers, we're creative. We know how to get around this to keep from getting sued.
Yes.
Don't do anything which puts you in any kind of jeopardy.
And honestly, when in doubt, and if you feel like it get you in trouble, it probably will. So
when in doubt, leave it out. Right.
Just leave it out.
Okay, so somebody comes to you for advice, starting out writing.
Depends on what the advice is. It's a kind of a loaded question.
Exactly. I know. I left it very open-ended for you. So it's like,
okay.
Well, make sure you're happy. I know a lot of incredibly unhappy writers. And like I say, you know, if you get depressed or writer's block, you don't show it. And your public persona is always positive.
Yes.
And that's a very important thing for a number of writers who want to sell. Nobody likes Eeyore. I know some Eeyore writers, and oh my God, they go to shows and they sit and they look at their phone or their tablet, head down the entire time. They don't even look up.
I know. It's like, no, you have to look at the people walking. Half the time when I was in Saratoga, New York, I instigated the conversation. I would, if somebody just looked at me for half a second, I'd be like, "Hi, how are you?" And that's how they got to my table. And
exactly. Making a personal contact. I'm not trying to push something. I always don't push something at them. I say, "What do you like to read?"
There you go. Yeah.
And if they answer with something that I have, we can start a conversation. If they've got something I don't have, I go, "Well, I don't, but that person over there might have something." Or have you read, like Dane says, have you read this book or this book? And they go, "Oh yeah, that's a good one." And that's all. You know, you're not just always trying to sell a car. You're trying to have a conversation with a person.
Yeah, that's so true. I think one of the hard, and this is what gets a lot of people kind of downcast when they go to events. They think to themselves, "Oh, well, this person sold 50 books and stuff. I can do that too." When they come back and they only sold like 5, they're like so downtrodden. But the biggest thing is, and this is how I always go into every single Comic-Con, even if it's one I've been at 1,000 times and I say, "Oh, I'm going to sell 20 books or something." I always go into it thinking, even if I were to sell one, I'm happy. But the biggest thing is about these type of events, whether it's an author event, whether it's a writer's conference, whether it's a Comic-Con, it's always good going in knowing that you're not there to make money. In fact, half the time, you probably won't even break even. And that's because if you consider your hotel, your gas prices, your gas mileage and all that, you can count all of that in, you will more than likely not break even. I know and also the amount of books, how much it costs you to print the books to bring with you too. So if you factor all that in, more than likely, you probably won't break even. The point of going to all those types of events is to make connections, meet people, get numbers,
get new fans.
Exactly. And
I take it from the viewpoint, even if I sell one book, I go, yeah, I found a new fan and I sold one book, but I've got 24 books out. And if they like that one, they're going to come back for more and they're going to tell friends. And I always view it like that. I have found new fans by making a personal
Exactly.
connection. Same with you. Yeah.
100%. And it took me a long time to get out of the mindset that I want to become instant. This is not an instant famous thing. I know there's a lot of films out there that glorify writing to the extent that, oh, you're going to be instant famous overnight. That does not happen. And I was unfortunately young and naive and thought that would. But it takes a lot of hard work, which is why a lot of writers end up saying, why am I doing this? Well, you're doing this for you. That's the one thing I have to say. And if you're not doing it for yourself anymore, it's going to come through in your writing. And your audience will say, hey, this book's a little bit different than it normally is. So that's why I always tell people, and that's the hard thing is when you're discouraged, whether it's a writer's block and you have to have that persona, it's okay. And I always tell people, you are still human. It's okay to show that you're struggling, because we are all struggling regardless of what's going on in the world. We're all struggling to some extent. So it's okay to show your humanity, because in a weird way, that'll encourage other people that it's okay to have downtimes. It's okay to have struggles. The point is just to keep going, regardless of what your struggle might be, whether it's writing a description of a character that you're struggling with, whether talking it out to yourself, whether you're pretending you're role playing with yourself, just make sure you're doing that away from windows and away from other people. Just gonna point that out there. Anyway, but the point is to still keep going. I always say, like, I've heard of people who can pop out 50,000 words in a month. And I'm like, I'm lucky to write out 5,000 words in a month. I don't know what you're talking about 50,000 words in a month, because that's why I never actually do NaNoWriMo, because with the amount of stuff that I have to do, plus my daytime job, that's just not realistic for me. But for other people, it's like, great, that's awesome for you guys. But one thing that I have struggled with ever since the beginning of my career is comparing myself to other successful writers. I see how many books they get out. And I think it was my filmmaker friend, Killarney, she's like, wow, you're getting out a book a year. That's amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? I'll be happy to get my third book of the trilogy out within the next year at this point. But the point is to not compare yourself. And that's so hard, especially if you're in a tight-knit group of writers and you see their success. But if you start comparing yourself to their success, you're not comparing yourself to you where you were like 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. The point is to be better than you were then. And
you'll never be happy. I mean, I've seen people that were number 3 on the bestseller list. They wanted to be number 2 or number 1. They were on for 6 weeks. They want to be on for 10 weeks. It's never enough for them.
Right.
I was at one conference. This very high level writer comes in with sales that anybody would kill for, comes in and he starts complaining because he was at a bookstore down the street and they didn't have the display of his books set up the way he wanted. And he comes in and he's bitching. And I go, and that's the view I have of this writer. Okay. Yeah. You are just a dissatisfied person who nothing's ever going to be good enough. And you're always going to be unhappy. Forget that. I try to be positive because I really enjoy what I'm doing. And you seem to do it as well. And the thing is that there's so many, they're complaining about the publisher, their editor, the sales, whatever, the distribution, and they're just not happy with what they do. I go, well, why are you doing this?
Right. I mean, the thing is, what the truth is, we're all going to have hard days and we're all going to have amazing days. But how my mom always put it, you fake it till you make it. If you're really frustrated, but focus on the good side, because eventually once you keep focusing on the good, you'll feel good. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but reverse psychologizing yourself in that weird way, but it works. And I know for me, I'm going to be honest, this third book of the trilogy is kicking my butt like crazy, because I'm writing from the perspective of a villain that is a biological machine, and it is sociopathic by nature. So I'm having to write from the perspective of a machine, which I have never done before, but it's the villain. And that's what he's writing. And that's how he's talking. And that's how he's thinking. So I have to think several steps ahead of a machine, which, as we all know with computers, doesn't always work very well, because sometimes they break and we don't know why. So it's difficult difficult for me. And so I found that when I keep thinking from that perspective, I feel so down in the dumps. Like I'm also going through writer's block with my screenplays because I'm taking the original short stories and turning them into screenplays. Let me tell you, that is hard when you're trying to look at your old writing from when you were 12 years old and you realize you had no plot. That is difficult because you were a kid and you just wrote whatever came to your mind. So that's hard trying to, it's so
you
true.
write scenes, but you don't connect them or write a plot with a narrative that follows all the way through.
Exactly. So it's like trying to rewrite these screenplays to make them make sense to keep with the original storyline is almost virtually impossible. And there are moments I'm like, why am I doing this? And I'm like, because I can. Because I want to, because I have a story to tell and I think it's worth telling. And I think it's going to really encourage people out there. And honestly, that's why I do it. Not just for me, but I think of all the people out there, all the kids that I've encouraged through all the talks I've given at high schools who are still coming to me and saying, hey, I remember you from all those years ago. And right now they're going into journalism or writing of some kind. And it was because I said something. You know what? You will never know the kind of impact you make on somebody. And you might never know until, you know what, years later, they might be the next J.K. Rowling for all you know, and all because you said something positive and you helped them. And to me, that makes my day. That tells me that I did something and I helped somebody because, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to encourage them that writing is not a dying art. It's still alive and it's only alive if we make it alive, if we continue to make it alive and have that encouragement and that excitement for what we do.
Right. I get people to say, well, why don't you, try to write a bestseller? And I go, because they don't want to. I said, you know what? If you want to open a restaurant, you can open a McDonald's and you can sell a lot of hamburgers. You can push these fast food burgers on people and sell a lot. I said, I want a fine dining restaurant where it's a unique experience with my flair brought to it, where people go, they have a very memorable time and they want to come back. That's the kind of thing I want to do. My books are idiosyncratic. They're not super commercial because they're the books I like to read, the books I want to write. We've got a lot more questions here. Okay. Dean says, are you a big film person? What's the most anticipated movie for you this coming year? And besides The Witcher, and with the theaters opening up, his is the new Batman film. And Robert Hayes is giving us a 10-minute warning. So folks, get your last minute questions in while Ceara talks about film. Okay.
So as I've said before, I'm a huge Marvel fan. I've always been Marvel. So, and no spoilers if anybody's seen it. I'm waiting for the new Spider-Man, heavily waiting for the new Spider-Man. I've seen things on Facebook and I'm like, I know, don't tell me. I haven't had the chance to go see it. Don't tell me, Dean. But I'm looking forward to that.
Uncle Ben dies.
What?
Uncle Ben dies.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is a spoiler, I suppose.
It's a total spoiler.
But I think another one I'm looking forward to is for next year, The Secrets of Dumbledore. I am super looking forward to that because I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do with that. And I've seen the trailer. I'm really obsessed with that. So really, those two are the ones that I'm looking forward to seeing. I know there's others. I think they're coming up with the new Doctor Strange, who is my favorite of all the Marvels. And so I'm looking forward to that next year. But so there's a lot of good films I'm looking forward to. As a budding filmmaker now, I am looking more forward. I look at films now from a filmmaking perspective, and I say to myself, oh, hey, I could probably find a way to finagle that, or I could probably do that. So it's kind of nice because as I'm watching a movie, I'm learning what to add to my stuff. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice seeing from a different perspective.
Yeah, it's a different medium, but the way you tell a story, it's still a story. And you have to present it so that people get it and people want to be into that story and follow it. Marie says, do you write with a stopwatch? Do you do like the Pomodoro method of 20-25 minutes, take a break and then come back, or just straight through and bowl on until you're empty, or what?
I do it when I get that urge. So sometimes I one of my things that I've been doing is No, do you watch film with a stopwatch? No, I don't.
Watch film with a stopwatch. Wow, no.
That's interesting. No, I have not done that.
That would ruin the film for most people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but it goes to the writing. I mean, that brings up a very interesting point on what is your writing process?
So my writing process is I go straight through, like for me, I have to be in a mood for it. And that was something one of my other writer friends told me. She says, don't force it. If you force it, it'll be noticed in your writing.
Same. Yeah.
So if I have a scene in my head, I have to get it out right then. I can't stop. Even if it means I get like 3 hours of sleep and go to work the next day, that's exactly how I have to do it. I could go weeks without writing anything. And then I can go weeks with writing something and forgetting everything else about my life. It really kind of just depends. And I always tell people, write when the urge hits you. Don't, unless you're one of those people that has to have a certain setup to write, then go for it. But for me, I have to write when I feel that power surge through me. I can't.
When the muse calls, listen.
Muse calls. There you go.
And the muse will slap me upside the head, and I'd be working on like a couple of projects, and it's like, wait, that's another completely different thing. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Listen and do it.
Right.
And it's funny because, there's so many people go, oh, you need to write all the time and every day and all. I'm like, well, I don't do that. And yet when people see my production, they go, oh my God, you've got so many books out, you must work all the time. And I go,
oh yeah,
yes, absolutely. Right.
Yep. Totally.
Yep. Sure. Yep.
Yep. Every day. Yep. 10 hours a day.
Yep. 6 hours a day. Sure.
Yep.
Okay. So what's the next step in your writing world other than the filmmaking, the third book, the whole Arthurian cycle? What else, Slacker?
Well, because this trilogy sets the stage for the main villains, the book after the trilogy is going to be their story, which is something I came up with when I was temping at some company several years back, and it hit me like a ton of bricks of that story is what I have to write. And it was funny because I didn't think about a universal villain until much later, until that happened. So I had written Memories of Chronosalis, then I had thought, oh wait, I should have a villain in this. It's like, I don't know why, but it hit me after. And this is going to be my hard sci-fi novel, so it won't be as much fantasy, it'll be more sci-fi than anything. So
okay, folks, last minute questions. We're just about out of time, but you can contact her. You want to put your website in there that they can get hold of you?
I can. Me multitask.
And again, folks, I posted a link to the blog where she's having an interview, so you can find out more about her work with information. Check that out. Check out her website. Check out her books. If it's anything of what you're interested in, definitely buy some. And if you like them, please leave good reviews. They're very helpful.
Yes, please. Reviews are helpful. They're one of those things that most people actually don't notice. They think to themselves that, oh, I'm just putting up a star, or I'm just putting up a little description. Well, those help because reviews are what a lot of people will look at when they're going to cold buy a book or something. I don't normally do that. I usually look at the description of the book and say, hey, this looks really good, I'm going to try it. But there's a lot of people out there who rely solely on reviews, especially with Amazon. From what I've been told by my Amazon friends, my Amazon writer friends, yes, I'm on Goodreads, by the way. Yes, I am. Goodreads is another location too. If you get a certain amount of stars on Amazon, I think what happens is your book gets shifted to the top of their list of some kind, so you get more noticed. That doesn't happen with Lulu because Lulu doesn't necessarily do that. They're not that. They're more of a old-fashioned platform, I guess. So that's why I rely heavily on Goodreads. I rely on, Facebook advertising and such, and then my own advertising as well, going to Comic-Cons and other events. But I love Goodreads, by the way.
Thank
I
you
have a blog.
so much for coming here tonight. It's been terrific. I mean, again, you and I could go on for hours talking about writing and publishing and all the books. Folks, do contact her if you have more questions.
Please.
Check out her works, and we're going to turn you back to Robert now, who's going to give our final coda for the night. But thank you so much for showing up here tonight.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Happy holidays, guys.
Kara, make sure to take a peek at the chat. You just got several thank yous.
Aw, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. Happy holidays.
You can save the chat too if you want. You know
you
that,
did,
right?
you did a great job, Kara. So everyone, including Kara, I'll send you the recording tomorrow morning via email. You'll also get a link to a feedback survey. Please take 30 or 60 seconds and fill that out. And Dale and I are looking forward to seeing you. Dale's in the process of booking our January, February, and March speakers. And I think we're going to have a great lineup for you. So we're looking forward to it. And we'll see you the third Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock starting in January. So thank you all so much. If you celebrate, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you all in a few weeks. Thanks so much. Dale, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, that's it. Thank you so much. Again,
All
it's
right.
I know the best guests, you know, it's so easy when you know the right people.
Keep up the good work, Dale. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.